A $200 billion industry erased 12 soil methods from public knowledge. I found them. They was in the original USDA wartime manuals from 1943, buried in government archives that nobody talks about anymore. 20 million American families use these methods to grow 40% of the nation's vegetables, 10 billion pounds of food. No synthetic fertilizers, no patented seeds, no corporations. Just soil and 12 techniques so effective that the fertilizer industry had to make you forget them to survive. I'm going to show you all 12, every single one backed by named researchers and peer-reviewed studies. One of them was proven in nature to reverse 60 years of soil damage in just 6 years, using nothing but a handful of dirt from the woods. Another fixes 200 pounds of free nitrogen per acre every year for free. A third was validated by Cornell University to produce more calories per acre than any modern farming method. Zero fertilizer, less water, more food. And I'm going to be honest with you about which ones actually work and which ones the internet has overhyped. Because one of these 12 is genuinely controversial, and most channels won't tell you that. I will. No one is selling this knowledge. No corporation profits when you use it. That's exactly why it was buried. But the soil remembers, and now, so will you. December 1941, Pearl Harbor. Within 1 week, Secretary of Agriculture Claude Wickard launched the Victory Garden campaign. The government printed millions of pamphlets. NBC broadcast gardening shows on national radio. The USDA deployed scientists and nutritionists to teach families how to grow food in backyards, vacant lots, rooftops, anywhere with soil and sunlight. By 1943, it worked beyond anyone's projections. 20 million gardens, 7 million acres. President Roosevelt himself confirmed it. 42% of all fresh vegetables consumed in the United States came from Victory Gardens. A Gallup poll found 54% of families grew food to save money, not from patriotism. These methods worked because they produced real results. 75% of American housewives were canning food by January 1944, averaging 165 jars per year. Americans bought 315,000 pressure cookers in 1943 alone, up from 66,000 the year before. This wasn't a hobby. This was a nation feeding itself. The USDA manuals recommended composting, crop rotation, companion planting, seed saving, cover cropping, natural pest management, not as alternative practices, as official United States government policy during the nation's greatest crisis. Then the war ended, and something worse began. During the war, the United States government built 10 new ammonia plants to produce ammonium nitrate for bombs. The Tennessee Valley Authority alone delivered 30,000 tons of anhydrous ammonia and 64,000 tons of ammonium nitrate crystal to make munitions. But in 1946, there were no more bombs to build. There were massive surpluses, and there were factory owners who needed a new customer. The USDA suggested spreading the surplus on farmland. The TVA ran a demonstration program, giving free synthetic fertilizer to 90,000 farms. In the first 15 years, fertilizer sales in the TVA region grew at 3 times the national rate. A $41 million government investment generated $57 billion for the fertilizer industry. More than 75% of fertilizer products used worldwide today trace back to that single converted weapons facility in Muscles, Alabama. United States fertilizer consumption went from 2 million tons in the late 1940s to 24 million tons by 1981, a 10-fold increase in 1 generation. The global fertilizer market now stands at $200 billion annually. Just 4 corporations control 75% of all United States domestic production. Between 2020 and 2022, those 4 companies saw profit increases of up to 1,500%, while their costs rose less than 50%. Your grocery bill went up, and their stock price went higher. And the environmental toll is devastating. The Gulf of Mexico dead zone caused by fertilizer runoff from 31 states measured 6,700 square miles in 2024, about the size of New Jersey. Over 400 dead zones now exist worldwide. Only 35% of nitrogen fertilizer applied to crops is actually absorbed by plants. The rest becomes pollution. Agricultural runoff is the leading cause of water pollution in United States rivers and streams. Meanwhile, municipalities began outlawing front yard vegetable gardens as unsightly. Suburbia replaced garden plots with lawn grass, and the 12 methods that fed America during its darkest hour were quietly removed from the conversation. Not because they stopped working, because they stopped being profitable. Here's what they erased. Hack number 1. Chop and drop. Your grandmother did not haul plant material to a compost bin. She did not bag it for the curb. She cut the plant at the base and let it fall right where it grew. Look at a forest floor. Nothing gets removed. Leaves fall, branches break, everything returns exactly where it came from. The fungi, the bacteria, the microscopic universe beneath your feet evolved over millions of years to process exactly what falls on them. When you remove plant material, you break that cycle. When you leave it, you complete it. And the data is overwhelming. A foundational 1954 Kansas study found that mulch just half an inch thick reduced evaporation by 41%. 3-inch reduced it by 67%. An 11-year Ohio State study found that organic mulch increased water holding capacity by up to 35% and moisture retention by as much as 70%. A 10-year study in Inner Mongolia showed that leaving crop residue on the soil surface increased yields by 14% and water efficiency by 13.5%. But here is the number that should stop you cold. In classic Nigerian field trials, mulched soil lost 0 tons of topsoil per year. Unmulched soil lost 41 tons. Barrow lost 230 tons. 0 versus 230. Same soil, same rain. The only difference was whether plant material was left on the surface or removed. You do not need equipment, you do not need to buy anything, you just stop removing. Cut your tomato plants at the end of the season, leave them. Cut your bean vines, leave them. Cut your squash, leave it. The soil does the rest. Every time you bag yard waste, you are throwing away the thing your soil needs most. This is not innovation. This is remembering. Hack number 2. Forest soil inoculation. If your garden soil is gray, compacted, lifeless, there is a solution hiding in the nearest forest, and it costs nothing. 1 teaspoon of healthy soil contains 100 million to 1 billion bacteria, several yards of fungal threads, thousands of prozoa, and 10,000 to 50,000 different species. Professor Kristen DeAngelis at the University of Massachusetts says there are 1 trillion times more microbes in a teaspoon of soil than stars in the known universe. Your garden soil should contain this. If it does not, it is not soil, it is particles. But here is the secret your grandmother knew. You do not need to buy biology, you can transplant it. In 2016, researchers at the Netherlands Institute of Ecology published a landmark study in Nature Plants. They spread a thin layer of soil, less than 1 centimeter thick, from either grassland or heathland onto degraded farmland that had been chemically farmed for nearly 60 years. Within 6 years, the transplanted microbes did not just improve the soil, they steered the entire ecosystem. Plant communities shifted, soil invertebrates returned, fungal networks rebuilt themselves. The lead researcher said soil organisms, the bacteria, fungi, and roundworms, determine the direction of ecosystem restoration. 6 years, a thin layer of forest soil, 60 years of damage reversed. In 2023, University of Wisconsin researchers published in Science showing that trees inoculated with microbes from climate-matched sites were at least 50% more likely to survive severe stress. Those transplanted microbes were still detectable in the roots 3 years later. Victory Garden manuals from 1943 recommended this specifically. Obtain soil from a healthy woodland area and incorporate it into garden beds. They knew. They documented it, and then it was forgotten, because no corporation can patent a handful of forest dirt. Go to an actual forest, find undisturbed soil under mature trees, scrape away the leaf litter, take a few handfuls of the dark, crumbly soil underneath, mix it into your garden beds. Those organisms reproduce exponentially. Bacteria double every 20 minutes. Fungal networks grow inches per day. A handful becomes a universe within weeks. No one can sell you forest soil. No corporation profits from you walking into the woods. No patent exists for organisms that evolved over millions of years. The knowledge survived in practice in backyards, in families who never stopped. And now, it survives here. Hack number 3, the mycorrhizal handshake. This connects directly to hack number 2, and it may be the single most important thing in this entire video. 80% of all land plants form partnerships with underground fungi called mycorrhiza. These fungi attach to roots and extend the plant's reach by hundreds of times. A 2024 meta-analysis covering 187 studies found that mycorrhizal fungi increase phosphorus uptake by 105%, nitrogen uptake by 67%, and overall plant biomass by 47%. In wheat, these fungi deliver 50 to 80% of the plant's total phosphorus, even when there is no visible growth response above ground. The plant looks the same, but underground it is fed by a network you cannot see. Globally, these fungal networks sequester 5 billion tons of carbon per year. That is equivalent to the combined annual emissions of the European Union and Russia. This is not a gardening trick. This is one of the largest biological systems on the planet. Your grandmother did not know the word mycorrhizae, but she knew the rules. Do not overtill, do not leave soil bare, do not use chemicals that kill what you cannot see. Every rule she followed protected these networks. Every modern practice that replaced them, synthetic fertilizers, heavy tillage, barrow, destroys them. Here is the part that should make you angry. High phosphorus synthetic fertilizers actually suppress mycorrhizal colonization. The plant stops investing in fungal partnerships when it gets cheap phosphorus from a bag. It is like replacing a thriving local economy with a vending machine. Fast, convenient, and ultimately devastating. To rebuild these networks, follow 3 rules. Minimize tillage, because tilling shreds fungal threads that took months to grow. Keep living roots in the soil year-round, because fungi die without host plants. And stop using high-phosphorus synthetic fertilizers. The networks will rebuild themselves. They have been waiting. Hack number 4, no-till mound planting. Here's something most history books leave out. The Haudenosaunee did not use plows. They never did. They planted in mounded hills, pushing seeds into the soil without turning it over. European colonizers called this primitive. Science now calls it correct. Tilling destroys soil structure. It shreds fungal networks. It exposes carbon to oxygen, releasing it as carbon dioxide. It breaks apart the aggregates that hold water like a sponge. Every pass of a plow or rote tiller undoes months of biological work. Mound planting preserves all of it. The mound warms faster in spring, giving seeds an early start. Water drains away from the seed, preventing rot, and the soil biology beneath stays intact. The fungal networks, the bacterial communities, the earthworm tunnels feeding the plant from day one through systems that took months to establish. The Midwest has lost 57 billion metric tons of topsoil in 160 years of plow agriculture. Iowa's topsoil was 14 to 16 inches deep when the prairie was first broken. Half of it is gone. Current erosion runs at 25 times the rate soil forms. A University of Massachusetts study found that a third of the entire Corn Belt, nearly 30 million acres, has completely lost its carbon-rich topsoil layer. That is not farming. That is mining. And it started when we decided that turning soil over was modern, and leaving it intact was primitive. Build mounds, plant into them, stop turning the soil over. Your grandmother's grandmother knew this before anyone wrote it down. Now I need you to stay with me, because hack number 7, a method that indigenous communities perfected over thousands of years, was proven by Cornell University to produce more calories per acre than any modern monoculture. More calories, less water, zero fertilizer. But first, hack number 5, companion planting pest shields. Marigolds were specifically recommended in Victory Garden manuals for planting alongside vegetables, not for decoration, for warfare. Marigolds release compounds from their roots that suppress nematodes, microscopic worms that destroy roots. They attract hoverflies and parasitic wasps that eat aphids and caterpillars. They repel whiteflies and certain beetles. One flower doing the work of 3 different pesticides for the cost of a seed. A 2024 study from Oaxaca, Mexico, showed that when corn is damaged by pests, it releases volatile organic compounds, chemical screams that travel through the air to neighboring beans. The beans respond by producing nectar that attracts parasitoid wasps. Those wasps fed on enriched bean nectar live nearly twice as long and kill dramatically more caterpillars that were attacking the corn. The plants are communicating. They are recruiting allies. And they have been doing it for thousands of years. We replace them with spray bottles. Plant basil near tomatoes, it repels aphids and whiteflies, and some gardeners report improved tomato flavor. Marigolds near everything. French marigolds are the most effective for nematode suppression, and you need to grow them for the full season because the compounds release from living roots. Plant notoriums as trap crops for aphids. Aphids colonize notoriums preferentially, leaving your brassicas alone. Plant dill and fennel to attract beneficial insects. Their umbrella-shaped flower clusters are landing pads for parasitoid wasps and lacewings. Your garden isn't a factory floor, it's an ecosystem. The chemical pesticide industry generates $14 billion per year in fungicide sales alone. Every companion plant you add is $1 they don't earn. Every beneficial insect you attract is a spray bottle you don't buy. The Victory Garden manuals understood this. Pest management through diversity, not through poison. Hack number 6, 3 Sisters Guild Planting. The Haudenosaunee called them the 3 Sisters: corn, beans, and squash. This is not a planting technique, but a family. To plant one without the others was to break a promise. This is not mythology. This is the most validated polyculture system in agricultural science. Corn grows tall and needs nitrogen. Beans climb and create nitrogen. Squash spreads wide and shades the soil. Plant them together, and each solves a problem the others have. The corn gives the beans something to climb. The beans give the corn nitrogen to grow. The squash gives both protection from weeds, pests, and moisture loss. Dr. Jane Mount Pleasant, a Tusora scholar at Cornell, produced the definitive research. Her study found 3 Sisters plots yield over 12 million kilocalories per hectare and 349 kilograms of protein, exceeding any monoculture or combination of monocultures on the same land area. The system can sustain over 13 people per hectare per year. Together, the 3 crops provide all 9 essential amino acids, a complete diet from one garden bed. Iowa State University research, in collaboration with 4 Native American nations, found these polyculture plots produce 28 to 53% more food per unit of land than the same crops grown separately. They measured a 24% increase in soil biological activity and 54% less nitrate loss, meaning the system cycles nutrients more efficiently. A Penn State study revealed why it works underground. Maize roots forage shallowly, beans explore the full vertical soil profile, and squash adjusts based on phosphorus availability. They are not competing, they are dividing the territory. And remember the 2024 study from WWII? The pest defense was not just about individual plants communicating. The Three Sisters system creates an entire defense ecosystem. When corn is attacked, beans respond. When squash shades the soil, pest habitat disappears. The Haudenosaunee did not just plant 3 crops, they engineered an ecosystem. For thousands of years, indigenous communities across the Americas grew food this way. Then, European agriculture arrived with a simple message: rose monocultures, inputs you buy every season. The Three Sisters were dismissed as primitive. Guild planting was replaced by row cropping. Cooperation was replaced by dependence. But the science did not change. The soil did not forget, and neither did the families who kept planting. Hack number 7, compost tea brewing. I need to be honest with you. This hack is genuinely controversial, and most videos on this topic will not tell you that. Think of compost tea as liquid biology. You steep finished compost in water for 24 to 48 hours. Organisms multiply, you strain it and apply it to plants. The idea is that these microbes coat leaves out competing disease organisms and jumpstart soil biology when applied to roots. Here is what the science actually says. A Rodell Institute in Penn State 2-year trial found compost tea offered measurable benefits for crop growth, yield, and quality. Some studies show disease suppression, particularly against damping off. Dr. Harry Hoyink at Ohio State discovered that compost creates induced systemic resistance in plants, essentially training the plant's immune system. But Dr. Linda Chalker-Scott at Washington State reviewed the literature and found results are inconsistent. A Washington State University pilot study testing aerated compost tea on cherry blossom brown rot across 8 cultivars found it performed no differently than plain water. And a critical United States Department of Agriculture study found that when molasses or other nutrient additives are used, dangerous pathogens like E. coli and Salmonella can multiply by factors of 10 to 10,000. The honest recommendation? Compost itself has robust, well-documented benefits. If you brew tea, use only fully matured compost. Skip the molasses. Apply within 4 to 6 hours, or better yet, as one researcher put it, top dress your garden with compost and water it. Let nature brew the tea. The knowledge matters, but so does the truth about what we know and what we do not. That is what separates real information from marketing. What you just heard about compost tea is something almost no one else will tell you. Most gardening channels treat it like gospel. I showed you the actual studies, including the ones that found it performed no better than water. That honesty matters when I tell you the next 4 hacks are backed by overwhelming evidence you can trust, that I am not selling you anything. I am not sponsored. The next hack alone, cover cropping, can save you hundreds of dollars per acre in fertilizer costs every single year. It is free, it works while you sleep. And the fertilizer industry has spent decades making sure you never learn it. Because the moment you grow your own nitrogen, you stop being their customer. Hack number 8, cover crop living mulch. Here is a rule your grandmother knew that modern agriculture forgot. Bare soil is dying soil. When soil sits exposed, it loses moisture, loses structure, and loses the organisms that make it alive. Nature never leaves soil bare. Something is always growing. And so should your garden. After your fall harvest, scatter seeds: crimson clover, winter rye, hairy veach. These are not crops you eat, they are crops that protect. The nitrogen numbers alone are staggering. Hairy veach fixes 80 to 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre for free. This nitrogen is manufactured by bacteria living in root nodules, pulled directly from the atmosphere. Crimson clover adds 50 to 125 pounds. North Carolina State field studies measured up to 195 pounds of nitrogen per acre in hairy veach biomass by midday. At current fertilizer prices, that is hundreds of dollars of fertility created while you sleep. Winter rye works differently. Its roots punch deep into compacted soil, breaking apart hardpan and creating channels for water and air. A meta-analysis found grass cover crops reduce weed biomass by 68%. The United States Department of Agriculture Census of Agriculture reported 18 million acres of cover crops in 2022. That sounds like a lot. It is 4.7% of United States cropland. 95% of American farmland goes bare every winter, bleeding nutrients and topsoil into rivers. During the 2012 drought, farmers using cover crops saw soybean yields 11.6% higher and corn yields 10% higher than farmers without. That is not a theoretical benefit. That is food on the table during the harvest year. In spring, you cut them down, chop and drop, and the cycle continues. They create fertility, they prevent erosion, they cost almost nothing, and nobody can patent a clover seed. Hack number 9, green manure nitrogen banking. Cover crops protect. Green manure goes further. It deliberately grows a crop for the sole purpose of killing it and feeding the soil. Before the war, USDA extension guides called this the farmer's savings account. You plant a thick stand of legumes, field peas, fava beans, crimson clover, or hairy veach, and instead of harvesting, you cut them down at peak bloom and incorporate them into the soil. Every cell of that plant material becomes food for bacteria and fungi. The nitrogen stored in root nodules releases slowly over weeks, feeding whatever you plant next. The USDA blog on green manure stated it explicitly. These practices were being rediscovered because they never should have been abandoned in the first place. Here's the economics that the fertilizer industry doesn't want you to calculate. A 50-pound bag of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer costs $30 to $60 and feeds your soil for one season. A $3 packet of crimson clover seeds fixes 50 to 125 pounds of nitrogen per acre, improves soil structure, prevents erosion, feeds pollinators, and leaves your soil better than it found it. One is an expense, the other is an investment. One depletes, the other compounds. This is the original meaning of the phrase, feeding the soil, not the plant. Synthetic fertilizer feeds the plant directly, bypassing the biology. Green manure feeds the biology, which then feeds the plant, through a relationship that has worked for 400 million years. One approach creates dependence. The other creates a system that strengthens every season. Hack number 10, seed saving and adaptation. When you buy seeds, you buy genetics selected for someone else's soil, someone else's climate, someone else's conditions. But when you save seeds from your own garden, you create genetics that remember yours. This is adaptation in action. A study in 2018 at the Earlham Institute examined 100 wheat varieties worldwide and found geographical patterns in DNA methylation changes between them. The plants weren't just genetically different, they had literally reprogrammed their gene expression based on where they grew and passed those changes to their offspring. A study in 2016 on 180 rice varieties showed over 50% alterations in DNA methylation under drought stress accumulated over centuries of cultivation. This is called epigenetics. Your grandmother called it common sense. Save seeds from your strongest plants. Dry them in shade. Store them in glass jars somewhere cool, dark, and dry. Plant them next year. They perform better. Save again, they improve again. Rowan White, seed keeper from the Mohawk community of Akwesasne, says, 7 generations creates meaningful adaptation to your specific place. Seeds from your strongest plants carry the code for surviving your specific challenges, your frosts, your droughts, your pests, generation after generation, adapting to exactly where you are. 4 companies now control 56% of the global seed market. Bayer acquired Monsanto for $63 billion. In 2013, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 in Bowman versus Monsanto that farmers cannot replant patented seeds. The farmer owed $84,000 for planting soybeans he'd bought from a grain elevator. 90% of vegetable genetic diversity has been lost in the past century. But resistance is growing. Over 660 seed libraries now operate across 48 states. During the pandemic, one seed library alone distributed 20,000 packets, versus a few thousand per year normally. 6 states have passed seed exchange protection laws. When refugees have fled war zones throughout history, they carried only what mattered. Often it was seeds, sewn into coat linings, hidden in shoes, wrapped in cloth and held close. Because a seed is a promise. It says, wherever I land, I can begin again. The corporations buying up seed companies for $63 billion don't understand that. They see inventory. Your grandmother saw the future. Your grandmother didn't need a catalog. She had a jar, and that jar held more than seeds. It held independence. Hack number 11, sheet composting. Most people think composting means a bin in the corner of the yard, turning it every week, waiting months. Your grandmother had a better way. Sheet composting, sometimes called lasagna gardening, means composting directly where you will plant. Layer cardboard on the ground to smother weeds and grass. Add alternating layers of green material, kitchen scraps, grass clippings, coffee grounds, and brown material such as leaves, straw, shredded paper, or wood chips. Make each layer a few inches thick. Water it and then walk away. The organisms come to you. Earthworms migrate upward through the softened cardboard. Earthworms are not just decomposers. Their casts contain 66% higher density of mycorrhizal fungal spores than surrounding soil, and microbial abundance in earthworm casts is 2 to 3 times greater than in control soil. They are building your fungal network for you. Fungi colonize the brown layers. Bacteria explode through the green layers. Within one season, you have inches of rich, living soil built directly on top of whatever was there before. Clay, gravel, concrete rubble, dead lawn, it does not matter. This bypasses the biggest barrier in gardening, bad existing soil. You do not fix it, you build on top of it. The biology does the mixing for you. And unlike a compost bin, every nutrient stays exactly where your plants will use it. Victory gardeners during World War II used this on vacant lots across cities. Pavement, rubble, compacted clay. They sheetated over everything. A 3-year Italian study found that compost-mulched soil increased organic carbon from 1.2% to 8%, a 5.5-fold increase. That is not improvement, that is transformation. Hack number 12, succession planting and continuous harvest. The final hack is not about soil chemistry. It is about time. It might double your total harvest without adding a single square foot. Most gardeners plant everything at once in spring and harvest everything at once in fall. Your grandmother planted the same crop every 2 to 3 weeks across the entire growing season. She would sow lettuce in early spring, then again 2 weeks later, then again. By the time the first planting bolted, the third was ready. By the time the third was done, a fall sowing was coming in. USDA Victory Garden manuals explicitly taught succession planting and recommended cold frames, simple wooden boxes with glass lids, to extend the season by weeks on both ends. Some families harvested 9 months out of 12 with nothing more than a cold frame and a calendar. The principle is brutally simple. Your garden's most expensive resource is not water or fertilizer. It is time. Every day a bed sits empty after harvest is a day of lost production. Every week between last frost and first planting is wasted potential. Succession planting treats time like the finite resource it is. The modern version adds one more layer: interplanting. Fast crops between slow crops. Radishes between rows of tomatoes. Lettuce under pole beans. Quick maturing crops harvested before the slow crops need the space. Every square foot producing food for as much of the year as possible. Victory gardeners called this relay planting. One crop hands off to the next, like runners passing a baton. No input costs, no technology, just timing. It is the difference between a garden that feeds you for 8 weeks and one that feeds you for 8 months. 12 methods. Chop and drop. Forest soil inoculation. The mycorrhizal handshake. No-till mound planting. Companion planting pest shields. 3 sisters polyculture. compost tea, cover crops, green manure, seed saving, sheet composting, succession planting. These aren't gardening hacks, they're survival systems. Methods that build soil instead of depleting it. Methods that create freedom instead of dependence. Methods that compound forever. None of them require a purchase. None of them can be patented. None of them deplete the soil. Every single one builds something that gets stronger over time. 20 million Victory Garden families knew this. 40% of America's vegetables were grown with these methods. Without chemicals, without corporations, without cost. Then the war ended. The bomb factories became fertilizer factories, and an industry worth $200 billion needed customers. The simplest way to create customers was to make you forget what your grandparents already knew. Dependence by design. Here's what they didn't count on. The soil remembers. It holds the biology. It holds the networks. It holds the memory of what it once was. And it is ready the moment you stop poisoning it to come back. The Midwest has lost 57 billion metric tons of topsoil. A third of the corn brote has lost its entire carbon-rown top layer. Iowa's soil erodes 25 times faster than it forms. Generating 3 centimeters of new topsoil takes 1,000 years. We're losing it in decades. The UN says 90% of Earth's topsoil will be at risk by 2050. FDR said it in 1937. A nation that destroys its soils destroys itself. But every single hack in this video rebuilds soil. Everyone. Chop and drop adds carbon. Forest inoculation restores biology. Cover crops prevent erosion. Mycorrhizal networks build structure. Seed saving preserves diversity. These aren't just gardening techniques, they're the opposite of everything that's destroying the ground beneath our feet. There are 2 kinds of knowledge in this world. Knowledge that makes you dependent, and knowledge that sets you free. You've just received the second kind. This is the remembering. The soil didn't forget. It waited for 80 years. This knowledge slept in dusty journals and fading memories. But seeds don't die. Methods don't disappear. They wait for someone to remember. This week, try one hack, just one. Chop and drop after your next harvest, or grab a handful of forest soil, or save 3 seeds from your strongest tomato plant. A cover crop where bare dirt is showing. Sheet compost over that dead patch of lawn. One hack, 1 week. That's how 20 million families started. That's how a nation fed itself when everything else failed. The fertilizer industry prayed you'd never find this video. The seed corporations hoped this knowledge would stay buried. The soil waited 80 years for someone to remember. If this video helped you and you are thinking about trying even one method, please watch the additional video linked in the description to learn more.